Let's talk about Ravens rookie Mike Green, who, of course, was selected in the second round out of Marshall, put up 17 sacks in his final collegiate year, and was an absolute beast. Could the breakout season for the Rook be incoming? It's still early. Pads aren't out yet. It's literally the third session of voluntary team activities here in the month of June. But guess what? This dude's flashing. Cliff Brown, Jeff Zarebek, Jonas Schaefer, all noting a highlight moment that took place yesterday for Mike Green, number 45. Picked off Cooper Rush. As Jonas notes, it was one of the highlights of today's practice. It was in the flat on a naked bootleg. Snoozy Kane had one as well, by the way. Cliff Brown, and Late for Work on BaltimoreRavens.com, said that Mike Green showed impressive awareness with that interception against backup Cooper Rush. Also grouped Snoozy, a second-year player out of Purdue, a safety in that grouping as well in terms of showcasing impressive awareness. Cliff said Green showed his athleticism by dropping into coverage and picking off a pass intended for Isaiah Likely. Rushing the quarterback is Green's forte after leading the FBS with 17 sacks, like I mentioned, at Marshall. But in addition to rushing from the edge, the second-round pick displayed good instincts going backwards. So there you have it. If you're looking for a reason to get fired up in the slow month of June, a week out from mandatory minicamp, a month plus out from training camp, perhaps it's this. The Rook, Mike Green. Will he be a rotational player as they sort of ease him in? Maybe. Or will he showcase and put his best foot forward in terms of what he can bring to the NFL level and how his transition looks in the coming months, putting himself in a position to earn playing time, considerable playing time right away? If I'm a betting man, I'm probably going with the former. I just want to play it on the safe side. But then again, if he doesn't have his off-field issues, this is a dude who has been compared in some traits, in some areas of his game, to Abdul Carter. And we all know that Abdul went top 5. So the safe side is they're going to ease Mike in, and ultimately this is a player that's going to be a rotational piece for them to start. And once he starts to get his legs under him, Grammar Police, where are you at? Shout out Beth. Shout out Jason from yesterday. Once he gets his legs under him as a Rook, just like Nate Wiggins, different position, different part of the defense last year, they're going to continue to add to his workload. And that is something that's awfully enticing. That's exciting, knowing that at this point, early in the process, the ones aren't out there. Yes, it's Cooper Rush, who's scheduled to be Lamar Jackson's backup. Yes, he's got a decent amount of experience, considering he's never been a full-fledged starter in this league. Yes, you have to temper the expectations, but it's great to see an edge rusher of all players showing the versatility, right, and the awareness that Mike Green appears to have shown yesterday during OTAs at one winning drive. Elsewhere, there were press conferences held, and Ravens offensive line coach George Warhop had this to say about one significant change that's coming to the offensive line, I assume, for 2025, because George is in charge. Ultimately, this goes through John Harbaugh, but something that they've kind of hung their hat on in recent years in the midst of a rebuild and retooling up and down the offensive line has been a rotation. Could that be on the way out? Perhaps.
Been a starter. I don't like playing two guys. So, we got two veteran guys here with Andrew and Ben. Let them fight it out, right? If one of the young guys come up and they can add competition to that, we'll let that happen. But I prefer to have a starter and a backup. I don't like going in with combination guys. So that's my hope.
It's not just been guard that the Ravens have leaned on this idea of a rotation. And by the way, leaned on is one way of putting it. They have successfully leaned on a rotation at multiple positions over the years, particularly at tackle. Now, this was a Joe D'Alessandris way of thinking, And to his credit, and rest in peace, Joe D. It's coming up on a year since we lost the great Joe D, a fantastic man that I had the pleasure of interacting with on multiple occasions, both out at One Winning Drive and in Fells Point when I used to be a resident in Baltimore City. And he'd be walking around with his wife at the time. And now, just within the last few years, both have tragically passed, which is so darn sad. But I guess with some of the retooling, with some of the young players, with some of the inconsistencies that were taking place, right? The lack of sturdiness, if you will, up and down the offensive line for different reasons. It could be injury related. It could be some players have walked in free agency, like Patrick McCary did this past offseason. The Ravens, for whatever reason, as unorthodox in a lot of ways and not unheard of, but really a rare way of executing offensive line play, is something that they have, again, leaned into, and successfully so, at a rotation. But you got to wonder, though, last year, when you think about one area of weakness, if you will, for an offense that was high-flying and superpower-ish, was probably the lack of discipline, the lack of polish, and some of the penalties that they committed that were self-inflicted. How much of that could have been related to the lack of momentum built up because of leaning on this mechanism of rotating players in and out? I wonder. And I would be really curious, as a follow-up question to offensive line coach Warhop, is, do you think that there could be a correlation between that? What makes you come out strongly the way that he did during yesterday's press conference and say, hey, I don't like rotating? I mean, he didn't mince words there whatsoever. And he also mentioned, I mean, this is kind of obvious, that his two veterans, well, Andrew Vorhees is really not a veteran when you think about his rookie year being sort of a redshirt season. But anyway, the two players that have been in the building the last couple of years, and for Ben, it dates back even longer than that, it's up to them. It's a two-man competition right now, if you ask George Warhop. Sure, are there younger players that are going to have a shot over the next couple months to make their case? Sure. But in all likelihood, starting left guard in the aftermath of Patrick McCary leaving in free agency is going to come down to Andrew Vorhees and is going to come down to Ben Cleveland. Andrew was asked about the spirit of competition yesterday during his press conference, and he had this to say.
I mean, go either way, right? I mean, I always just want to go out there and be the best football player that you could be. And yeah, I mean, to my perspective, it's just there's an open position out there for grabs, and it's up to somebody. And so why not me, right? Why not anybody else for that sake? But yeah, I mean, just kind of take it day by day, and we'll just see what happens when this all settles down and we get ready for a week one opener.
I think it's his job to lose, folks. Andrew Vorhees, again, if you remember Andrew's story, a couple years ago, the Ravens had started their press conference, their post-NFL draft press conference, in the 7th round before the actual draft was over, because they had already taken care of their picks, right? This was the 2023 7th round. And so all of a sudden, I remember covering that press conference, watching that press conference, getting ready for our show. And then, oh, by the way, the Ravens traded back into the 7th round once the press conference had already been conducted to go get USC guard Andrew Vorhees. And we're all thinking to ourselves like, wait, what? What was the idea here? He literally tore his ACL, right? During one of the drills, he tore his ACL. Prior to that setback, he was slated to be, I don't know, day 2 pick, potentially day 2 pick. And we all remember what he did, by the way, on that ACL tear at his pro. I think it was at his pro day. Dude put up like 20 plus reps on the bench of 225 with a torn ACL. What a beast. And so since then, since 2023, that first rookie year obviously was a wash as he recovered from that ACL. And then last year, he was the projected and the shoe-in starter to kick things off. And he played starting caliber football before going down with that injury. Now, it wasn't as severe of an injury to keep him down throughout the entire year. And John Harbaugh confirmed to me when I was in Indianapolis at the Combine that it wasn't due to his health that he never got a shot the rest of the way. It was more like, hey, we like what Patrick McCary did in fill-in work, and we decided to let it ride. So that tells me that with McCary gone and the Ravens being content to let him walk in free agency and go to Jacksonville, I think they're comfortable in what they have in Andrew Vorhees. Do I think there'll be a competition between he and Ben? Sure. But I think it's Andrew's job to lose for my money. And I see that there is a gift run that has just begun. I'll get to that in just a second. You guys make it so much fun. You know that? You guys make it fun in here. You just make it fun. It's Andrew Vorhees' job to lose for me in terms of left guard. And I said, when you think of the projected starting lineup, to me, there were questions last year. There were questions the year prior. To me, it's pretty set in stone. You got Ronnie Stanley, newly extended Ronnie Stanley, your franchise left tackle, back for more. You've got Andrew Vorhees, projected favorite to be starting left guard in wake of Patrick McCary's absence. Tyler Linderbaum, obviously a contract year for him. You would think he remains a priority for this organization. They declined his fifth-year option. That number was astronomical for centers when you take a look at the market. But we know that when healthy, and he has been for the most part, the guy is country tough, extremely durable, Iowa strong, so on and so forth. He's one of the top, if not the top centers in the entire draft, and that's why they were comfortable picking him with a first-round draft capital selection a few years ago. He'll be your starter and mainstay at center. Right guard, there were questions certainly swirling around this position last year. I think Daniel Fa'alele, as crazy as it seems, has earned the right to be a projected starter. Is Ben Cleveland the more viable option on paper? I guess, but clearly not in the coach's eyes. And clearly they're going to continue to see Daniel Fa'alele, despite some of the conditioning issues that it looks like he's been having so far at this early point in the offseason program, as their guy at right guard. And based on what he put on film last year, it's hard to question otherwise. And then, of course, the bookend tackles are taken care of for the next few years. That's an exciting point of reality for the Ravens and ultimately Lamar Jackson's protection unit. It's Roger Rosengarten, the second-year player at right tackle. They drafted him in the second round out of Washington. And despite his first play ever, his first snap ever being one that he certainly wants to forget, my goodness, did he rebound and have a tremendous year, taking on anybody and everybody. You think about the big-time pass rushers that he went up against opposite, the TJ Watts of the world, the Max Crosbys of the world. Think about the Myles Garretts and everybody that Cleveland has. They almost got Abdul Carter. Thank God for Rodgers' sake and everybody else on that Baltimore offensive line, and they didn't. That would have been a two-headed monster and then some. So to me, this is an offensive line that has far less, I should say, questions than it did a year ago. And I think they've earned the right. The offensive line has earned the right to express confidence in them from my vantage point at this point in this progress, at this point in the offseason program. And sure, maybe there'll be some surprises come summer camp. But right now, I think that starting five is pretty darn solidified. Perhaps Joe Noteboom, their free agency pickup, is sort of the swing tackle McCary replacement. And then from there, you just got to figure out what you have with some of these young bodies in Emory Jones and Carson Vincent. Perhaps those players are years out, or maybe Emory Jones ends up being that swing tackle, or maybe he gets some run at guard. It'll be fun to see. It'll be very fun to see how things shake out in the summer, because I feel confident. I can confidently tell you that I think that they have a formidable, more than formidable, starting solidified offensive line. They also have pieces that'll be waiting in the wings the second a blip in the radar happens. And I think That is a luxury at this point in the offseason to feel good about that category, about that area of the offense. And I know I'm certainly in that camp.